All right. Federal Railroad Administration Office of Railroad Safety Hazmat Material Compliance Manual, December 2011. Chapter 9, the Federal Railroad Hazmat Material One-Time Movement Approval Process. 9.1 Purpose. The movement of the approval process established by Title 49 CFR 17450 was developed in the response to the generation of a large number of special permanent, formerly called exemptions, requested the regulated committee in their effort to move the non-conforming tank repairs for the repair and emergency special permit of Title 49 CFR 170.117, generally issued to prevent significant economic loss, neutralizing condition, threatening national security, or preventing injury to person or property. Often, sometimes the significant economic loss criterion was used even though the primary reason for the emergency processing request is necessary to move the tank of the car to effective repairs that could be accomplished with the car's current location. The FRA PHMSS formally researched the special programs administrators sought through the process would increase the movement and efficiency without compromising safety hazard material inspection. With the final rule, the docket is HM 21661 of FDR Registry 28067. 7. June 5th, 1996. Consolidated the revised in Title 49 CFR 174.47, 174.48, and 174.50. 174.50. Sectional 174.50 already allowed the short movements of non-conforming the leaking package under certain conditions into current statute 174.50. New section prohibited the movement of the bulk packaging as defined in Title 49 CFR 171.8 that do not conform with the hazard material regulation without prior approval unless short movement will reduce and eliminate immediate the threat harm to health and environmental. The primary brief explanatory discussion of the movement and approval of the process accompanies and an optional for the submitting the necessary information to the agency, which is available above the Acrobat PDF or Microsoft dot formats of the Federal Hazardous Material Safety Administration at FRA.gov/US/content 1799. The primary purpose of the movement of the approval is to ensure the bulk packaging that no longer the packaging specification moves safely with the rail necessarily in order to effect the corrective action and necessary repairs. However, the movement of approval the purpose to provide with the information database that can be maintained, mined, and evaluated to determine potential economic and systematic problems with the particular series of tanker tires, type of the valves, gaskets, and material. It also will identify the root cause of the defect, the potential effect of the permanently long-term situations. The information obtained as a result of the movement approval of the process can also lend itself to be in identifying the facilities that may be procedural problems requiring the greater assistance, ensuring the practices in regard to the packaging and the preparation for the transportation are adequate to ensure regulatory compliance and safety. 9.2 General Info. The General Info. Since 1996, the FRA has implemented an approved process in accordance with Title 49 CFR 174.50, issuing one type of approval that, under the authority of the FRA, Associated Administrator for the Railroad Safety Chief Officer, permits the movement of the bulk packaging and the railroad transportation in accordance with the specifically identified conditions and stated that any given approval issued with the packaging no longer confirmed with the regulatory packaging specification of the hazmat material regulations at Title 49 CFR 174.50 provided in relevant part. Section 174.50, non-forming, leaking, and packaging. The leaking of a non-bulk package may not be forwarded until repaired, reconditioned, overpacked in accordance with Statute 17.3 of this subchapter, except otherwise provided with this section. A bulk package that no longer conforms with the subchapter may not be forwarded to the rail unless repaired and improved with the movement by the Associated Administrator with the Federal Railroad Administration. Notification approval must be written through the telephonic and electronic means with subsequent written confirmation provided within 2 weeks for the applicable address. The telephone number C Statute 107.117D4 of this chapter. Title 149, 65, Title 49 CFR 174.50 is applicable to all bulk packages and defined in Title 49 CFR 171.80 that by easily beginning with the transported rail which does not conform with their packaging specifications in some manner. This includes bulk packaging that may not conform and regular hazardous materials, but which are represented within the transportation rail specification packaging per Title 49 CFR 172G. Well, all bulk packaging transported rail are encompassed with the Title 49 CFR 174.50, including portable tanks, intermediate bulk containers to the date, and approval that have generally only been requested issued for tanker cars. Occasionally, approval for the hopper, gondola cars, bulk packaging containing regulated hazardous material have been requested or issued. Notice have been issued in the past for the Hazardous Materials Division and headquarters staff as a respect to the movement approval to provide information guidance on the approval process. These are information provided in this chapter that incorporates supersedes previously issued guidance documentation. 9.3 Approval Guidance. The following are general policies and guidance existing in the assistant person seeking approval for the movement of the non-conforming bulk packaging for inspectors who provide advice to such entities. Approval is required for the movement of bulk packaging not conforming to hazardous material regulation except for the movement is short and necessary to reduce and eliminate an immediate threat or harm to human health or environment. Approval of bulk packages that are leaking will generally not be issued. However, they may be moved only so far that necessary to reduce the eliminating an immediate threat to harm to human health to environment when it is determined it is a movement with what would prevent greater safety than allowing packaging to remain in place. At Title 49 CFR 174.50, an approval request for the bulk packaging will temporarily revolve the securement device commonly referred to as the C kit has been applied. Will consider for issuance of the approval and certain specifications provisions consideration for the movement distance requested in the nature and the product as well as determining if the movement is best in course of action during the request evaluations process. Approval is needed for the non-conforming Department of Transportation specific bulk packaging, even if they are secured on a flat car or a gondola car. And approval is generally not needed for the tanker cars that are overloaded with a weight of the extent of 1% or less than the allowed maximum gross weight of the tanker car, except for those in case where the weighing is performed and properly calibrated statistic scales as weighing in the motion hump scale, where the rail carrier will not continue to transport the tank car without the FRA being issued. The approvals will not generally be granted to move the cars that are overloaded by the volume, insufficient outage in the tank for the product to be contained. If these instances, shippers will not arrange the transloading for the rail carrier for having possession of the shipment. Approval is not needed for tanker cars when tanker service equipment is overdue to testing, provided that the tanker car was filed prior to the inspection date of Title 49 CFR 173.31A3. Rail carriers are not obligated to honor an approval issued by the FRA and have the right to refuse the movement even if they have approval issued. They may require alternate solutions do not involve the further movement on the rail system. The FRA recommends that the requester needs the approval contact the appropriate representative for the rail carriers who would be involved with the moving of the defective packaging. This ensure that the rail carriers are willing to able to conduct the transportation of the packaging on their respective systems in order to get packaging to the requested desired location upon issuance of the approval with the FRA. The FRA cannot issue movement approval for tanker cars that are offered in transportation for interchange service are exceeded the 40-year age limit and stated in the Association of American Railroad Interchange Rules, Rule 90, that there is no federal regulatory age limit. The person of the cars affected by this will then need this to seek resolution with the Association American Railroad, the railway carriers involved. Approvals issued to the FRA will not only be applicable to movement of defective packaging. The FRA, with the understanding the United States authorized movement of defective packaging. Canada requires the issuing of the temporary certificate for the appropriate representative of the Transportation Canada. The request will need to be coordinated with the request to obtain the correspondence approval with the Transportation Canada. Movements of defective packaging across the border to or from Mexico will require a requester to coordinate the appropriate Mexican agency representative. Verbal movement approvals can be requested. The FRA may be granted verbal approval when circumstances, situation warrant the verbal movement approval process. Section 9.4 of the chapter for detailed information on this process. 9.4 Movement approval process. The movement approval process per Title 49 CFR 174.50 administration may be maintained headquarters staff at the Hazmat Materials Division in the Office of Safety Assurance Compliance, Washington, D.C., with the assistance of various hazmat specialists and inspectors in the field. 9411 Written Approvals. The process of the written approvals is as follows. 9411 Evaluating applications. Approval requests are received with the individual. The FRA does not stipulate that it should be requested approval. However, the request must be indicated with sufficient information so that headquarters of hazmat staff can effectively evaluate the request and determine if the defective packaging can be moved safely. If preferred, not required, that the submission of information is provided using the movement of approval request can be acknowledged. Downloaded to fra.gov pages 179 SHEML. The document should be completed and been sent by email or fax. Once request is initially determined by the required accordance with the Title 49 CFR 174.50, a subsequent approval number is automatically assigned with entering the approval request information in one-time movement database. An approval number, the consisting of the letter of the FRA, will follow with a dash, an 8-number, the first 2 numbers being the year, the second 2 numbers being the month, and the last 4 the sequential record assigned with the number that was beginning with 0001 at the start of each calendar day. The FRA HEML specialist have access to Hazmat the one-time movement database. The assigned hazmat division staff member handling the application conducts thorough review evaluations of the submittal in order to determine if the movement can be accomplished safely. If the movement can be accomplished safely, then approval is issued with all coordinated determined to be necessary and to ensure secure movement. The review may be included with consideration of requests for past history and complying with the previous issued movement approvals. The science special coordinated with the needed with the requester to obtain additional information in order to effectively evaluate the nature and severity of the defect condition as indicated identified in the request. Failure to respond to request may result in denial of the application. To the extent necessary and practicable, the design specialist coordinates with the appropriate representative of the rail carriers, the transportation, defective bulk packaging in order to include the theme of the process taking an appropriate action concerning that may have not into consideration during the evaluation process. Additionally, assigned with the specialist coordinated with the coroner or owner as appropriate to ensure awareness of the problem. Depending on the nature and severity of the defective condition, specialists may request through a regional hazmat specialist for the hazmat field inspector to conduct the field observation of the packaging, provided the feedback that may assist in the movement approval evaluation process. If upon evaluation it is determined that approval to be issued, the sign with the specialist drafts of the approval sign it is provided with signed approval but to the applicant in the email or faxes. Process ensures the appropriate FRA regional hazmat specialist who may be affected with the avenue needed not to know the movement of the packaging under the issued approval provided with a copy and approval of the approval request documented with either email or fax. Regional hazmat specialists review each of the movement approvals sent to the determined follow-up action. If any is warrant based on the nature of the noncompliance issue, the condition is stated as approval. Is stated in approval. 9412 structural issues. Specialist processing application must not consult with the headquarters of Hazmat Material Division engineer the defecting requirement of the movement of the approval involves the structural integrity of the tanker car that could affect the tanker car tank. This includes but are not limited to subsill, head brace, reinforcing bars, pads, the tank, the wells, other components such as service equipment and hazmat material staff handling of the approval and request with discretion determining whether an engineering consultant is necessary. Headquarters engineers will evaluate integrity of the tank provided with the specialist within the condition necessary to ensure the safety movement. If the engineer deems that the movement of the tank of its own wheels cannot made to be safely assigned with the specialist, shall deny the application unless the equipment can be loaded and secured on other railway equipment. When the structural integrity is in question, the regional staff shall have been consulted with in order to ensure the proper conditions are met to ensure safe movement of the tanker car. Alright, 9413 coordinated with additional disciplines if necessary. The approval process are coordinated with the appropriate motive power and equipment division specialist. If the tank has also mechanical noncompliance issues that will not and cannot be repaired before the movement, coordination is to be moved with the headquarters of motor power and equipment staff. If the car's movement is integral, interregional, involves more than one FRA region with the appropriate regional motor power and equipment specialist. If the car is moving intra-regional within a single FRA region, this may result in the separate and missed motor power and equipment one time more moving being issued over the issuance of the joint approval under the hazmat approval process. Coordination of the motor power and equipment personnel is not required if the tank car is loaded onto the skirt to a mechanically compliant flat car into mechanically compliant gondola car, regardless of whether the tank meets the mechanical regulations. 942 verbal approvals. Verbal movement approval can be requested, may be granted with emergency situations where Title 49 CFR 17450 applies if the movement is outside the scope of the regulation for short movements. Generally, the reason for the verbal granting of approvals is previous serious harm to public and environment. The process of requesting verbal approval is as follows. During the regular work hours, Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. Eastern Time, verbal movement approvals may be requested by contacting the FRA Hazard Material Division in Washington, D.C., either by telephone or electronically. After normal work hours, verbal movement approvals may be requested by contacting National Response Center. Sorry, I was calling that Nuclear Regulatory Commission, but it's actually National Response Center at 800-424-8802, notifying the National Response Center watch stand for the emergency processing of the movement approval is needed. National Response Center watcher stand will notify the Director Office of Safety Assurance Compliance and authorized representative of the Hazardous Material Division who will discuss the request for the application. If the car is not leaking, the request moved no more than 25 miles, the specialist for the region in which the car is located authorized verbal grant for the approval. The requester should be prepared to provide basic information product involved with the type of the bulk packaging, railway car, brief summary of the situation, reason for the need for the verbal approval. The FRA will evaluate the request and the need for the verbal approval. If warranted by the Hazmat, the representative shall verbally authorize the movement with operational conditions determined to be necessary for the safe movement. If approved, the application shall be issued with identifying the number of the track purposes instructed by the FRA year, month, day, or an R&V with the region involved in the verbal. A written approval request shall be still submitted by the FRA in accordance with a written approval process as soon as reasonable time possible, not later than 2 days after the granting of the verbal approval. All right, 9.5 root cause analysis report. The root cause analysis report, or RCA, is a vital component in an effort to achieve the FRA's goals in eliminating non-accident release. Currently, the identified components in which the defects encountered at the highest frequency, without determining the root of the cause of defects, cannot be adequately addressed. And following the procedures are provided with a guide for the FRA personnel requesting, evaluating, process root cause analysis reports. 951 requesting and submitting the root cause analysis report. The report requires a one-time shit, and are found in section 9 of the sign approval. The root cause analysis will be required by all non-accident related defects involved sightings and their appurtenances, line decoding, failures, cracks, holes in tanks, attachments, welds to the tank pad sills, failures, separation cracks greater than 6 inches in parent metal. The word root cause analysis will be used in reporting requirements. The form contains the basic guidelines of the content. The root cause analysis must be submitted 90 days from the date of the OTMA is issued. One-time movement approval. The grantor may request extension for the deadline for the provided justification. Maximum extension will be 90 days. Grantees will be instructed to submit the root cause analysis of the Hazmat Division Group mailbox hmassist@gov. In the case of engineering evaluated with request, the engineer must be copied with the email. If the submission to be via regular manual, the root cause analysis must be sent to the staff director and the engineer copied. 952 review the submitted analysis. As material energy is responsible for the root cause analysis evaluation. The following minimum content requirements comprise the acceptable root cause analysis. Detailed statement of the problem. This should include the basic information such as the tank car number, the location of the defect on the tank car, the make and model of the component, the description of the defect, and detailed statement of the problem factor contributing to the problem. This should include the narrative, investigation, findings, supporting the inspection, repairs, photographs, and drawings. The cause of the factor is, if the cause can be determined, this should be tied and stated the affected problem defined in a logical manner. Steps taken to prevent the further occurrence based on the finding. Conclusion of the investigation. The section should describe the steps and modify operational inspection steps to prevent reoccurrence. The minimum content requirements are not met. The engineer will request additional information on safety. Satisfy these requirements. Failure to respond may constitute non-reporting, could result in denial of future applications or penalty action. 9.6 file closure. Once the grantor has satisfied the requirements of the application, the file shall be considered closed. The approval required for the root cause analysis. The root engineer will save all the related information from the database respective file for the one-time movement order approval number. This engineer will submit the commit. The engineer will submit a comment describing the root of the cause. Insert the final approval date in the response received of the field in the database. Insert tab appendix A. I'm just gonna go over, quickly read the headers on it. That's all. I don't read the appendixes when I read these books unless I actually want to.